Welcome in. The Orange Bowl is over. It's a final 34-11. There you see it on the screen. You can hear it. I'm Dennis Fithian, Jim Scarcelli. We're ready to talk about this one. If you're out there and want to get a message through, go ahead, put it on, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, anything else. We'll put it up there. We'll answer the question. We'll read your comments. All of that, Scar, some things to address in this game. You go out there. This is not what any Michigan fan thought was going to happen, but you pick up the pieces in this one. Not much of a chance from the beginning, outplayed from the very beginning all the way to the end here. So, how do you explain it?
Hey, they got great players. They're good coaches, and we were very average as coaches today, and we were very average as players. And if you're playing against a team that has a little better talent than you, you better find a way to help your players. And we didn't do that. And our players didn't help our coaches either by making enough plays. But it's really frustrating. I thought they took it right down on us, and then I don't like it's easy to say after the fact. I don't know why we went for it on fourth down so early in the game and put our defense in such a bad situation. But there was, we got fooled early, man. I don't know that Hill was in there early, Denny, but two of those scores were miscommunications. We got fooled. We got conned. I always talk about, scheme and fooling people. That's a big part of offense. Well, we got fooled. That first touchdown, we didn't know where the heck their tight end was lined up. Then they run the halfback pass and fooled us, got out of position. Those are mental mistakes that we hadn't done a lot of that this year. But it's frustrating. We just got beat mentally, physically, and we got to eat it now and deal with it.
I'll tell you what, that rings true to me. I watched Michigan play, 12 regular season games and then the Big Ten championship game, and the way they played in those games and the way they tackled and the way they performed in all three phases of the game, that wasn't out there, tonight. So, first you look over and say Georgia. I mean, Georgia just looked like super hyped up, super prepared, ready to go everywhere. And on that first drive, I mean, we talked a lot about Brock Bowers, the tight end. He made a great catch down the sideline. But, when you see him come in there and who this guy is, and he goes in there untouched for a touchdown, your head is spinning. And, obviously they never recovered from that. You talk about him going for the fourth down, but, Georgia also came out with a plan. They were not going to let Ajabo and Hutchinson tee off on their quarterback. I mean, the ball was coming out immediately, and they were throwing it out to the wide receivers. I don't know, Michigan's corners, I know that they were giving them so much cover. I mean, there's just free yards out there, and they just kept throwing the ball to the outside. Then the tackling wasn't there, and it seemed to snowball on them. And then, Georgia was ready. They scored on the first possession. Second, they scored on the first 5 possessions. I mean, this game was over quick.
Yeah, the old Hayden Fry line put salt on the wound, and I really think with Hill out, it hurt us early. It was a simple formation, Denny. We just weren't aligned right. Kurt Herbstreit didn't even notice it. No one talked about it. They just put a tight end where a tackle's supposed to be, and the tackle where a tight end's supposed to be, and our safety was confused. The kid was uncovered. It was a total mental, bust. And and we didn't, I talked about that we got to contain this kid's ability to run. You know how many times we lost contain today on that quarterback? It was embarrassing how many times we lost contain. Hutchinson lost contain. I don't know how many times. Welchoff lost contain. It's like, if I'm prepared for this team and I'm a contained guy, I'm going to know how fast that damn kid is, and I'm going to take better angles. We didn't take good angles in terms of the quarterback. I don't think we took good angles in terms of running backs also. Like we didn't know how fast they were. It was a little discouraging there, but I thought Ajabo was a non-factor. Hutchinson was a non-factor. I think those guys both cost themselves money tonight, to tell you the truth. I love those guys. They're Michigan. I want them to do well, but they were non-factors in the game tonight. I didn't see it. We weren't real gap sound. Some of their big runs, it was the same kind of bullshit we had against Michigan State. We weren't gap sound, but frustrating, Danny, very frustrating.
Andre said they looked uninspired from the jump. You're talking about the safeties not being maybe lined up on their keys. It looked like there was a lot of that, this guy out of the spot. I don't know if they did something up front that confused them, but, there was a lot of moving around. You mentioned Michigan State, and there was some of that, and I thought that was you went back and that was for some of the substitution patterns, and then they were running on there trying to get a line, but it didn't seem like that. It just seemed like whatever the offense was doing, Michigan just it was catching them by surprise, and they had guys moving around. I don't know if they were trying to, have Dax, follow Bowers and then, others were in some kind of a zone or something. If they were trying to do something, I know you say tricky or unconventional there, and then maybe they didn't have Dax Hill the whole time down there in Miami. So that game plan there, shows you about some of the preparation and the practice leading up. I don't know. They definitely swapped more safeties in there and didn't have Hill right off the bat. And it was a factor. It was a factor. Like, those guys, not to say that they look lost, but it wasn't the same group, and it wasn't the same fits that they had. And they certainly weren't playing with the same confidence that they had in the previous 12, 13 games.
Yeah, there was a couple times we weren't lined up right at all. We were confused. That was a minor problem. But losing contain on that quarter, it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing after a while. And I'll give them credit. They knew how we were going to match up in certain formations. Empty, we were going to put a linebacker on their running back, and they hurt us twice. They scored 2 touchdowns on that. And Colt, they knew who they were going to identify. They identified Colston, who we had on their running back, and they hit 2 touchdowns on it. I'll give them credit for it. I mean, we did it later in the game where Donovan got us down into real, deep with we did the same thing to them. So, you gotta give them credit for capitalizing on, that scheme. What do we got here from what did you see as the biggest factor in the loss? Talent gap, execution, play calling.
Coach, that's from Alejandro for people that are listening on the pod and aren't able to read that. Go ahead and answer that one, Scar. Here, do you think if you had to chalk it up to talent gap, execution, play calling, or coaching, is there another one? I had my pen run, so I got a blue figure here.
Denny, I saw their defensive line, manhandle some of our guys a few times, some of our offensive linemen. Like, we haven't gotten manhandled all year. They pointed out one time the starters came to run the power play, and that 44 just smashed them and just crushed our power play. I'd say there was a slight talent gap. Look, they recruited, they got speed, big, fast, strong dudes, man, and they probably had more of them than we had. We tried to execute. There's times I saw us run our bubble screen, and some of our play calling was fine, but we just couldn't. We didn't block some of these guys at times. But then again, some of our I got to take that back. I think the play calling, we needed to do more to fool and help our offense, and we just didn't get it done. But at the same time, there were some of the same plays we ran that they ran. They executed better than we did. We both ran bubble. Their guys blocked it better than we did.
Yeah, Jim, if I could jump in, I think it's all of those things, but I've had to look to something, when you go to coaching there, and maybe this leads into the talent, but, just like I saw in the undercard there in the Cincinnati, Bama game, Cincinnati was having a lot of trouble just getting into some offense because Alabama was sitting on some of the things they were doing. They were getting their hands in the passing lanes, and they were tipping so many passes. That's what was happening with Michigan too. I will credit Georgia's defensive scheme there. Whatever they were seeing, whatever Michigan was going to do, they seemed like they were they knew where the play was coming, and they had a lot of tip passes. Some of those drops, I know people are like, tight ends are dropping the ball, and maybe they did on the first one. And, there was another one, but, some of those balls were getting tipped, a lot of that. And I know Cade has the sidearm delivery, but, I know other teams looked at that and say, hey, get up and get in the passing lane. And maybe Georgia's just talented and good enough for that. And I know whatever their offensive game plan was, like, they can line up and run the football. And yeah, they're going to scheme, and they're going to get their tight end. He can make, catches anywhere on the field. And then, if you mix things up, of course, he goes waltzing into the end zone. But, they came out and they decided that they weren't going to play from the pocket, and they got that ball out so quick to the wide receivers. And Michigan was sitting so far back. That was one of the key plays, one of the key factors in the game to me. Watching that, it was just like, wow, man, Georgia's really got an answer here for Michigan's pass rush, and it's getting the ball out quick and outside to whether it's the running backs or the wide receivers. And Michigan was playing back, and, they were just rolling down the field on that. Then they would hit them with the run. And I think schematically, they were, when you have the talent and you have the game plan and then you have the players and you put the scheme in, and you can say it goes to coaching. You can say it goes to scheme. You can say that the players, like Nakobe Dean, he's running sideline to sideline. He's making plays all over the place. I mean, I don't know what the scheme is to get to stay away from a guy like that. I mean, he was everywhere. He was in the backfield. When he wasn't there, he was chasing down anybody else. He was knocking balls all over the place. I mean, it looked like the talent gap. You said it was a little bit. It looked like it was a canyonous talent gap. And, I don't know. And if we just look at the recruiting rankings, it is like that, but it played out like that. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what my head's spinning a little bit on that. But when you list all those things off, I think it's a lot of them, but I think it's going to come back to the schemes. It seemed to me, but you got to have the players to be able to execute those schemes.
No, it's there's definitely they had some big, strong, fast dudes, and they got some high draft picks over there. They got good players. We didn't lose to a team that didn't have good players, man. But yeah, our offensive line got pushed around. We tried to run our best stuff, and I was telling you earlier, there's sometimes as a coach, the other team has certain players that are going to be hard to block or hard to run certain plays. And that darn Jordan kid, he ran down our zone play. We tried to block him, and we just couldn't. So sometimes you just got to take certain plays and throw them out against certain teams. And I think we may have been a little stubborn with some of that stuff. But, I thought our we fumbled the ball. We haven't had the kind of turnovers like that. We fumbled the ball, Denny. We had our quarterback fumbled, our running backs fumbled. Corum. I watched Corum, and I think I saw this against. And I hope I'm wrong, but he's the kind of kid. I think if he makes a mistake or something goes bad for him, it seems like that snowballs at times with him, because he dropped that pass against Michigan State, and then later that whole game was kind of. He just never really got himself. Now, in this game, he made some mistakes early, and I just wonder if he lets things hang around with him mentally. I hope I'm wrong, but I thought I saw some of that.
Yeah, I see what you're looking at there. I mean, he had that blindside block late, but, finally in the second half, I mean, they opened up with an interception, which wasn't any good, but they got a 3-and-out. Then Henning had a good return, and you're thinking, okay, even though it's 27-3, maybe they can build on something, and then he fumbled there. Here's a question that a lot of people want to know. I want to see what you think of it. McNamara did after, I mentioned that, that interception that he had, the second one, and then he had a fumble. Then McCarthy was in for good on the third drive in the third quarter. Do you think that was a benching for J.J. McCarthy, or was J.J. sent in because the game was pretty much over at that time? What do you think?
If I'm the coach of that team at that time and I saw what McNamara was doing, he was making mistakes he hadn't made in the past. The game's getting out of hand. I want to develop my other guy. He sees that both of them every day in practice. Maybe he thought he needed that spark to try to get something going. I think it was probably a little bit of all that. I think it was a benching and wanting to see the other kid JJ did some good things, but JJ wants to knock the guy's head off from 10 feet away. He throws the ball too hard. But then again, that's why you play him now, because he got to see it. He's going to get this. He hasn't had enough game reps. Well,
like on that slant to Roman Wilson down at the goal line. I mean, he's got to throw a little bit more touch on there.
Yeah, there's a couple. He threw one to the tight end. He just throws it too. I think unless they, if we don't see it corrected, then they're okay with it. But looking at it, it looks like he's throwing the ball too hard because we're dropping a lot of those little 10-yard passes because he's firing it off their forehead.
Well, he's got a great fastball. We do know that. I mean, and there was the one play, it was to the tight end. He fired that ball in a window where there was triple coverage around him. I mean, there's guys in the pros that can't make that throw. I mean, he delivered a 99-mile-an-hour fastball right in that window. I mean, that's an ooh and ah type throw. And I know if you're a fan, and Herbstreit couldn't help himself. I mean, it was a woo, and yeah, boy, 5-star. And this is, you know what? The very next play, the throw that I think that he makes the best, he was on the far hash, and right after he threw that one to all in the middle where he had that small window, he threw it from the far hash all the way across the field to Roman Wilson, and he had him, but he buried it into the ground because there wasn't any touch, and it wasn't an accurate pass there. And I've seen a little bit of that. It's just one of these things we're going to watch. But overall, he ended up hitting Donovan Edwards down there. That was a good ball. He's got the skills, when he's done this a few times. Guys have had him dead to rights, and he's been able to shake people off and then roll out of the pocket. I mean, he brings a little something extra. I don't know, like this is going to be talked about all off season, Scar, but I want, your opinion here. Cade McNamara led Michigan to, their first Big Ten championship since 2004. And, he held his own, everything, leader, you like him and all of those things. But is there a ceiling with Cade McNamara where he can get you to a certain point like a Big Ten championship? But if you're really talking about getting in and mixing it up with the big boys, you need that talent, you need that difference-making ability, and possibly, I don't know, if he can develop, is that something where even though McNamara will have a higher floor, and he would probably even have a higher floor next year, but you have the ceiling of McCarthy, and that's what Jim Harbaugh is going to have to figure out when he lets these guys compete, and he has to give the nod to one of these guys after spring. I mean, that's how I handicap it. That's what I'm looking at here. I don't think it's an easy decision. How do you see that?
I like the fact that we got two that can play, and we're going to have competition. The fact that he played JJ in the end here is going to make Cade McNamara work even that much harder. It's going to make JJ work that much harder because he's going to believe he has a chance. And I still think we're going to see them both play next year. Do I think we can win, and take it to the next level with Cade McNamara? Yes, I do. We got to surround him with better people, man. We got to surround him with better receivers, better tight ends, because you saw the athleticism tonight. And we just got to surround everybody with better players. But I like the idea of both of them. I like the competition they're both going to be faced with. No one's going to be no one's comfortable, man. I don't, that's how it was when I played. Bo used to say, hey, we start over, man. Everybody, no positions are given. Everybody starts all over again. And you got to compete this spring. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so in this game here, if somebody didn't watch it, let me just run you through a few things, Scar. And, people can continue to put their messages in here as we're just talking about the aftermath of the Orange Bowl. If somebody didn't watch this one and they said, hey, what happened? And you had to give them the Reader's Digest, what do you think happened tonight in the Orange Bowl? What would you say?
Offensively, our time, they're good on defense. They made things problematic for us, but we just looked, our rhythm wasn't right. Quarterback to running back, little passes. We throw the ball to Donovan Edwards, he drops it in the flat. We throw the ball to Corum over the middle, the timing wasn't right. The quarterback didn't know where he was supposed to be. I wonder what we did in preparation. How hard did we go? We just looked out of sync, where Georgia was a little more in sync than us. So yeah, I would say we looked out of sync.
Let me ask you an obvious question here that a lot of opponents will, and I already saw this, being put forward online, and you just have to deal with it. The further you go and the bigger the games, people are going to, knock you, as far as where you come along here. That just, comes with the territory. But there is the one thing, Harbaugh, all the way back 7 years ago, he won that first bowl game against Florida. But after that, he didn't. And, tonight, they didn't let out, Georgia's great and everything, but they didn't look prepared. They got run off the field. And in a couple other of these bowl games, they didn't look like they were prepared. And there's a lot of different reasons. They had some, guys that opted out the 1 year with their two captains. They had a, fourth quarter meltdown against, who was it, South Carolina a couple of years ago. I don't remember what really happened in that one, but, the approach in these bowl games and the preparation, I don't know. I can't ask you, you weren't down there. You didn't see the preparation. You weren't able to compare it. But do you think that that's something at least worth, exploring here if you're Michigan and you're self-scouting, after this one's done?
Yeah, they got to look in the mirror and say, what did we do? Was the conditioning a factor? I mean, it was a hot and muggy deal down there. It's hot for them too. I don't know if we were. I don't know if that was an issue, conditioning, but our timing didn't look right with our skill players at times. But that's a damn good team. I don't give a darn when you play them. Beating Georgia would have been a tough task. But yeah, you're going to always look at what you do in your preparation for bowl games, bye week. It's all what do you do as a program? And again, they got. I don't know what they're doing, but they got to take a look at it and try to put a better performance on the field.
Yeah, and if I'm going to answer that one, I'm going to say, they didn't do the little things. They didn't do the big things. It looked like they got out coached. Georgia's got a lot of talent, and, just knowing a little bit going in, the tight end was fabulous. He showed up on the first drive. They lost him in coverage. He walked in. I mean, people say, how do you lose their best player, their number one guy on the scouting sheet? How do you let him just, walk into the end zone? And, it's snowballed, steamrolled, whatever you want to say, uphill battle, after that. And then, Michigan on offense, they couldn't run the ball. Their passes were getting tipped. They couldn't block. They were getting overwhelmed on the line of scrimmage. They gave up a lot of sacks. They were dropping balls. I mean, all the things that you say, hey, these are the things that you have to do, to win against a big-time opponent. They weren't able to really do any of them. They did hit one pass to Roman Wilson for 42 yards when they're down 17-0. You could say a little too little, but I mean, they really, after that, until you got to, the fourth quarter, there really wasn't anything to hang your hat on that Michigan had going for them, except maybe when Henning, I mean, this is already in the second half after they had a pick and, AJ Henning had a decent return, but then, Corum fumbled. So, I mean, it was, they didn't play complimentary football. They didn't do the things that they had done all year long that put them in position to be in the college football playoff. They weren't able to do any of them against, a better opponent.
Yeah, everything we talked about, securing the ball, contain the quarterback, stop the run the ball. We didn't do any of it, man. And we didn't we didn't fool them. We didn't do anything to get. It's like Georgia knew a lot of some flaws in our defensive scheme. They're not going to know everything, but they found some flaws. They isolated a freshman linebacker. They had the sense to do that. Yeah. And Josh Gaddis didn't do that for our guy. Maybe he did it later in the game, but we needed to find that guy for their defense. Who was that guy? There had to be somebody, and we just didn't find him.
Yeah, well, and they, when we talk about Michigan, just like we were talking about the tight end there from Georgia, everybody looked at Michigan and they'd say, hey, 97-55, Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo, how did they neutralize those guys? Well, Stetson Bennett, as soon as he got the ball, he was firing it out to the wide receivers. I mean, and there was nothing that, 97 or 55 could do. They never touched Bennett. And then he did when he needed to a couple times, he had that big time run, and they lost him, and that was something. They made those matchups with the running backs, like you talked about. That was good coaching, how they set that up. I think another thing that they went with, you had a great camera angle on it when Hutchinson had that one offsides. He went with instead of the cadence, he had like a a different kind of clap. And obviously, I don't know if that's scouting or if that was just one of those things, or if Bennett is good on that. All of those little things, added up where, they had a good game plan, and, they weren't going to let Hutchinson or, Ajabo be able to pin their ears back and come after them. That never happened.
Yeah, I mean, Denny, I saw them blocking Hutchinson and Ajabo. They pass protect and blocked them. A lot of it was getting it out of their hands quickly, but a whole lot of it was they just flat out stuffed them and blocked them. And 97 was a non-factor. He got put on his back one time when Hinton got through and flushed the quarterback, and Hutchinson got put on his back. So
yeah, and I know Ohio State's tackles, those guys are going to be in the NFL, but the two Georgia tackles, those guys are Sunday players. It's not like you're looking at, and that's the one thing, earlier today, there's been a few different people that have looked at that too deep for Georgia and have talked about, 15, 16, 17 NFL draft picks, and they can only play 11. So this gets back to what people were saying about him. There were a few people talking about him not just being a generational defense, but one of the great defenses of all time. And then, Bama smacked him upside the head. Whatever that motivation was, that's, they went in, they weren't playing desperate in that SEC championship game because they didn't have to. Sure, they wanted to beat Georgia. They wanted to be undefeated. They wanted to beat Alabama and knock them out because that's their nemesis. But also, they knew in the back of their mind that, they didn't have to because they were going to get into the college football playoff anyways. And, Bama had to play desperate, and they did. And, Michigan ran into a mad, mean, motivated, all of those things, Georgia team. So, they got their best game, and Michigan wasn't able to match it. Michigan didn't have, I would say Georgia had their A game, and, Michigan, they didn't have an A game. I wouldn't even say they had a B. I think we want to say they had a C game. And if you don't have the talent and everything else, the speed and, and all those other things are equal, if the other team's bringing the A game and you're bringing the C game, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, so one of the things I talked about also, Danny, that I was concerned with prior to this game was our receivers getting separation. And I don't know that we got it done there. You talk about Alabama, how they moved the ball in Georgia. So much of it was the quarterback, avoiding pressure, making plays with his legs, getting outside the packet. Alabama's quarterback, and then the receivers were getting separation, and they were able to move the ball and make plays with those two dynamics. Our quarterback wasn't elusive, and our receivers weren't getting the kind of separation we need. So that's a problem. And another play that I had written down here was, again, it's about the miscommunication, the out of sync. We threw the ball up to 85 in the end zone, and they picked us off.
Yeah,
remember that one, Denny? That was totally. It just looked like we were out of sync, man.
Yeah, they weren't on the same page there, right?
Yeah, so that's just why is that? It's like I'm looking at that, and is that quarterback? Is that coach? Is that offensive coordinator? Is that the receiver? It looked garbage, man. It looked out of sync. Miscommunication, like what the hell we've been doing for the last month.
Well, that's it. And there was another time where, one of the corners, I think it was 4, he looked like at first I thought maybe the Georgia wide receiver pushed him a little bit to get the separation, but it looked like he just stopped running with him, and he ended up being 5 yards behind him and ended up, walking into the end zone. And to your point, you look at the offense and the guys that you saw all year long and how they were playing complementary football. Haskins couldn't go anywhere on the ground, either could Corum. We talked about him, some of the drop passes. Donovan Edwards, an awesome football player. He's going to have a great career ahead of him. He dropped a couple even here, but look at the receivers here. Wilson had the one big catch, but that was it. 42 yards. Anthony had the one late, but nothing from Cornelius Johnson, and just a couple catches there. You thought maybe you'd get a little bit more. Schoonmaker dropped one. You can't do that in big games if you want to beat a team like Georgia.
I felt bad for Vincent Gray because he's played. They did so much. We saw a defensive scheme this year that didn't put guys on islands so much. We protected our corners. We didn't ask them to cover man-to-man all game like we did last year. And Vincent Gray ended up having a pretty darn good year because of it. But for some reason, we went back and we did a lot more man. We left guys alone. We put our linebacker on really good running backs, and we put Vincent Gray out there at times on where he didn't get any help, and those guys were exploited. And it's I hated to see them go out like that because Vincent Gray really showed improvement this year, and our coaches did so much to protect our secondary and not put them in those kind of predicaments. But we were exploited today, and Georgia found it.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people, and I see somebody here, talking about it, it was a disgrace or whatever else. And let's answer that question because, what does a lopsided loss in the college semifinal mean here for Michigan? Because there's going to be a lot of people in this game, you old habits die hard. You go back for the last few years, and you lose. Just people get out of their mind and everything here. Heading into this game, you don't want to get blown off the field and everything else. None of that. And the further you go, the more you just have to take it. You got to take your medicine. People are going to go. And there's plenty to criticize Michigan about this game here. And of course, they're going to have people that go over the top and, really chop them down. That's just going to be part of the deal here. I think Michigan just has to take this one because they didn't come to play here in this one. And you could tip your cap to Georgia. And then you can also say, hey, hopefully Michigan's going to be able to learn from this, learn what they need to do in the bigger games, even bigger than the Big Ten, if they really do. And if they are going to be able to compete on a national level, they saw what it took out there. And if that's the gap there and how they played this year, this year in a lot of ways, whether you want to call it magical, it was an awesome season. They had not beaten Ohio State in a long time. They had not won the Big Ten since 2004. They had never played in Indianapolis, and they were able to go there. Of course, they never played in the college football playoff. Sometimes you got to get in there and get your feet wet, and it's a progression. Even though that it might be your one shot and all those things, but I'll take a step back here for Michigan. You could criticize them, for the way they played tonight because they really did. Get smacked upside the head here. But, overall, this was a good season. This was a memorable season, and there's a lot to build on here. And, they got a pretty good team coming back, and they're doing good off the field. The coaches look like, I'd say despite tonight, maybe they can learn some things in the bigger games here as well. You're always trying to improve and find different ways. But, overall, it's not about them being back and, it's about them, seeing if they can stack another season together like they had this year, where you can feel like, Michigan can compete for Big Ten championships and compete with Ohio State and get back to Indy and get back to the college football playoff and see if you learned anything. But, that's a long way. I don't know if it's any consolation for people here in the last few minutes here, Scar, of 2021.
Yeah, the media will there'll be a take on it from the media, and but the way I would look at it and the way I perceive it, we won a Big Ten championship. We beat Ohio State. We had a great year. We did a lot of great things, and we didn't get it done in the bowl game, and it was embarrassing. It doesn't measure up, but the big thing I'm always concerned with is recruiting. Okay, so is this game going to be a factor in some of these recruits that are still left out there because we still have the later signing date? It's all about recruiting as far as those are the guys I'm concerned with. I don't care if Paul Feinbaum wants to rip on us and some of these people in the media. I don't care about them. I want to know about the recruits. What are they thinking? Are they keeping the faith? Obviously, it's going to help our coaches and our players to know, where the yardstick is. We know what we had to do to beat Ohio State. Now we played a good Georgia team. It'll help us in spring in our preparation to just to know what the best teams are. So it'll help us from that standpoint. But all I give a damn about is recruits in terms of what people are thinking about Michigan right now.
Well, that's good. We talked about this game here and just what the lopsided loss meant and, the season and now how you look at it. So, finally here we talk about what's ahead. You're looking at that next signing day, which is the late signing period. That's February 2nd. So, yeah, that's something to zero in on. And then you got spring ball and then beyond. We already tackled the first question. It's going to be on everyone's mind. They were talking about it in the fourth quarter, and for good reason. You had J.J. McCarthy in there. That's going to be the big thing that's going to steal all the headlines. What's going to go on with the quarterback competition, and you understand that. I know you said, you talked about them both being back next year. I don't know how realistic that is. Maybe, I hope so. You can't have enough at that position right there, but also because you can hit the transfer portal right there and you can start for another team just like that. I don't know how realistic that is. So I think that's what's ahead. That's the big thing. The next signing day and then the spring and the quarterback competition. But, when I look at what they're bringing back and what they've already added here with the center from Virginia, they got a good offensive line. They got good receivers. They got good running backs. And, we'll see, what happens with the transfer portal. I think that would be another thing you got to keep an eye on because you're going to swap a lot of players out. You got a lot of guys coming in, but, I think Michigan fans should overall feel pretty good about the direction, even though it's going to take a couple of days, if not weeks here, because you're still going to be smarting, from this one.
Yeah, there's a Danny. Yeah, I'm already starting to look at next year, and there's a lot of we got 2 great quarterbacks, we got 2 good running backs, we got a lot of darn good offensive linemen. Shoemaker's probably coming back, probably going to lose all. We got a lot of really good receivers coming back, so that offense is loaded, man. Defensively, we got some really good inside defensive linemen. The question is the outside guys. Who's going to replace Hutchinson? Is Ojabo coming back? Ojabo hardly played tonight. They say he's a first-round draft choice. They don't even have him on the field on first down. I mean, that's how they must not think he can play the run real well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ojabo comes back. He could go pro. They got him picked because they love the way he rushes the quarterback. But there's the outside guys is the big thing I'm looking at. We got some good inside linebackers coming back. We got all kinds of secondary and safeties and corners coming back. So that team is going to be loaded, confident. We'll have a great spring. There'll be a lot of competition, a lot of people battling, and we'll just keep perfecting what we've done on offense and just keep expanding on the defensive package. So I think there's nothing but great news happening. We got to get through this game mentally and try to focus on what they did positively and keep spirits high over in Schembechler Hall.
All right, great stuff, Scar, all year long here for as far as we were able to do, coming in after that Michigan State loss. This is the first time we've been on where there's actually, Michigan's been on the short end of the scoreboard. So we knew it was going to happen eventually. It happens here in the college football semifinal. We'll do it again. Hopefully you'll join me, on Thursdays like you have. Those have been well received. And then, of course, after basketball games as well. But a great job here during the football season.
Hey, Denny, it's a lot of fun, man. We love Michigan, and we're trying to promote our guys and a lot of really great things, coaches and players this year for Michigan, and it's all good, man.
All right, Scar, take care, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Go Blue.
There you go. Good night, everybody.